there and welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth today. I'd like to thank both the newbies and the returning visitors as always. In case you're new and you don't know, I'm Anna, I own Lorena's Labyrinth. Before I get into the content today, because it's actually a big subject, I would like to acknowledge the returning members for their ongoing support and participation and being part of my journey. I'd also like to let them know that today is part 2 on the subject of death and dying, and we'll be talking about this stuff in the chitter chatter in a few moments. But as always, whether you're new or you're old, I'm putting in chapters into the description because I feel it's particularly important today because of the content that I'm loading. And I have a feeling, even before I get into this video, it will be a long one because I'm sharing a number of different experiences with you. Now, if you're new to the channel, I do thank you for visiting and for watching and viewing, and I would encourage you to leave a comment if you like what you see, what you hear. Do click the like button. Share the information actually is another way to sort of help people to grow and develop, and also give consideration to subscribing. I try to load about 3 videos a week, but because I do shorts, it's sometimes a bit more. But if you don't subscribe, just like would be great. That would reinforce to me that this is the kind of content that you're interested in. Now, the other thing too, sorry, I had to take a pause there, catch a breath. The other thing too that I would like to encourage people, whether they're new to the channel or returning visitors, is please do feel free to make your comments, leave suggestions, ask questions. If you're comfortable, share your own experiences, because this is how we grow. And I certainly find that the best way of sharing information is actually to share our experiences without reaching a rock solid conclusion about what may or may not have happened, or what the purpose is behind it, because I think when we make a conclusion, that leads us into judgment, which is, well, it happened like this for me, so therefore it's going to happen like this for everybody. I've almost found that there's variations to experiences, and because no two situations are exactly the same, are they? So anyway, where am I going with this? Just basically that the experiences that we have, they are what inform and shape what we call our personal truth. And as I said, there are variations because not only do the situations vary, but the way we interpret the situations vary, the way we use words, language, and all the rest of it, that's all different from one person to the next. So today, when I speak to you about the subject matter of death, dying, and ease and transition, of course, as I said, I'm going to be referring to some of the deeper and more profound experiences that I've had in my life that have shaped who I am and my truth, and they become like permanent markers on your soul. For instance, through the process of doing the prep for this particular video, I have found myself revisiting these situations in my mind, and I think I could do a photo identikit, if that's what you call it, if I knew somebody who was that good an artist, to get them to draw up some of these images that are on my mind, because they actually sear into your memory in such a way that you just know within yourself that this has to be true. There's no doubt, okay? You know, the truth, I always say, the truth of spirit is something that you know both in your heart and in your mind. Now, if you're a newbie, I'm going to try and hurry up here so that I can actually get into the content. But for the newbies, what I want to do right now is explain to you what has informed and shaped my experiences. Because if this is your first visit to the channel and this is the first video that you've watched, you might be thinking, well, who is this person? Who is Anna? Why does she have experiences that might be relevant to this? So to validate my experiences for you and to help you understand the position that I come from, is that in about 2000, I consciously made a decision to start to develop my gifts of healing and to raise my personal vibration. And I did it initially through doing Reiki attunements with this really big focus on chakra balancing, chakra alignment, speeding up the chakras and all of this kind of stuff. And I also started doing healing, distance healing, things like that. I was actively, consciously working with energy. And in the process, what many people aren't aware, and this is one of the reasons why I don't teach psychic development in this kind of forum, because there's responsibility. But as we start to speed up our personal vibration, we start to actually develop and blow open the psychic gifts. which is the clairs. So to put this into perspective, as I raised my vibration, and I just need to clarify here, we can raise our vibration and go up, and we can also control it and bring it down. If we're too open and we're receiving visits that we don't want to see and that kind of stuff, we actually have the power to slow it down and become grounded and working from a space of reality. But if we're doing spiritual and energy work, we can actually raise our vibration, at least temporarily, to be able to communicate with spirit. So where I'm going with this is, through the use of energy, I started to be able to develop my clairs, the gifts of clairvoyance, clairaudio, claircognizance, which is clear knowing, clairempathy, which is the feeling, which is actually a lot of the ways that I got my messages. And these are all the precursors to becoming a full-blown spirit communicator or medium, okay? Now, obviously, in the early days, they were not particularly reliable gifts for me, or more to the point, I struggled to make sense of the information that I was receiving. So I wouldn't say that I was a skilled medium, but I certainly did manage to develop my gifts as what we call a vessel of healing energy. But anyway, moving on. That was in about 2000. I'm just pausing and trying to skip over things and get to the point. Okay. But in 2014, after using these gifts for many years, delivering psychic services, spirit communication, mediumship, and that kind of thing, I desired to attend university and complete a 4-year degree, a Bachelor of Social Work, which actually took me 5 years because obviously as a mature age adult with children and grandchildren, there was a couple of delays. And then once I completed that, I had about a sabbatical of about 2 years, and then I decided to do a Masters of Counselling. Now, to put this into perspective, I didn't actually complete the Masters. I did all of the theory, but I didn't do the practical component. So I'm not qualified as that Masters. I never finalised it. But the motivation and the intention for me doing these studies was actually out of a regard for humanity and a desire to be a good service worker, energy worker. Now, anyway, before we get into the actual content of Death, Dying and Ease of Transition, I'd like to share with you today, or I'd like to invite you to check out the Numerology Forecasts. Now, if you go to the Numerology playlist and you search Forecast, you should have all the Numerology Forecasts come up that way. If you don't, let me know and I'll put the links into the description. The reason why I would like you to go and visit it is so that you can basically leave your feedback. We're at a good time of the year where you'll have an idea whether or not the annual forecast has applied to your life, or if it hasn't. And then also, if you look at the previous monthly forecast for your personal year, you'll be able to feed back to me whether or not that had any relevance, or if it was applicable to you. You've got a far better idea. Now, I've made it easy within all of these videos that I've loaded in the Numerology playlist, where it's all time-stamped, okay? So if you were, say, in a personal year of 5, you can just go to each of these videos. You don't have to watch the whole one. Perhaps watch one, maybe the annual forecast, where I talk about how you calculate what your personal year is. And then from there, you just open up the videos, you click on the link, and you go to the forecast little chapter slide, and they're only about a minute each, so it won't take you a long time, but you can reflect on whether or not it was applicable to you. And if you can feed back to me whether it was, whether it wasn't, that would actually be really good, because it helps me to evolve my understanding and interpretation of the numbers based on the 21st century. So I will thank you in advance for that. So now for the content that obviously I believe most of you will be watching this video for today, is talking about the ease of transition that people have. And sometimes it's not easy for a soul to leave behind the body for a number of reasons, but the life review is something that can actually make it easier. It's about, in many ways, doing a karmic rebalance before we actually get to that stage of shifting over to the other side. The simplest form of description of the process would probably be similar to the one where, if you've known people that have had a very close call or a near-death situation occur, and they will say, I saw my life pass before my eyes, except it's a little bit more comprehensive. Just want to apologise for the doggy that's chewing on its squeaky toy as I do this recording, but I'm going to push on through. Anyway, I first learned about the life review at the time I was completing my Reiki attunements, and my Reiki teacher some people call a Reiki teacher, a Reiki master, had told me that it was something that was a really good thing to do and that it helped people, particularly at the end of life, for this ease of transition. Now, I can honestly say, as with you, and where you're at probably right now when you listen to this, I didn't fully understand at that time what it meant, but I used to do a lot of distance healing at the time because I was into the energy work and doing healing as opposed to doing psychic mediumship. And I had a healing bucket. Now, whenever I send healing, as people may be aware, or maybe not if you're not aware, I always put in a sentence under it that the healing is delivered under grace in the divine way. And if it is appropriate for the person to receive, this is what I'm sending to other people, and with their consent and permission of their higher self or the eternal self aspect, because this is about respecting a person's free will. We'll go into that later on, because they can either choose to accept or to decline healing. So anyway, where I'm going with this, excuse me as I swallow, is that I do have some humour, particularly within the eyes of hindsight in regard to this situation, because as I said, I wasn't fully aware of the process and I didn't actually have conscious recollection of receiving it myself. And so therefore this experience where I learned how it plays out in the physical existence is because I sent it and I received confirmation verbally that it had been received. Now, this is where it becomes a little bit funny, a little bit confronting, certainly very much enlightening. For people that aren't aware, I had a extremely nasty divorce. I had been married to an abusive man and I was experiencing psychological, emotional and financial abuse, all the really lovely stuff that you get when you've got children and you've left an abusive partner. Anyway, what a lot of fun and joy that was. But point being that I was trying to rise above my problems and to be forgiving and to continue to care and have compassion for my ex, because I understood, having been married to him, the events that had formed and shaped his personality. But anyway, excuses and justification, we might call that in the mental health field. But anyway, where I'm going with this is I used to send healing on a regular basis to these different people, and often when I was sending healing I would include him in it, obviously asking for consent from the higher self aspect. And anyway, I had become cynical. Okay, I'm human. For me it was like, oh, whatever, what a waste of time, that's the human me. And so I decided, I'd made the decision that I was no longer going to include him in the sending of healing because I hadn't noticed any changes in his behaviour and it just seemed to be ongoing, and I'd reached that judgmental space that it was a waste of time and why bother. He was what he was, and end of story where he was concerned. Plus, we'd actually been separated for about 2 years at that point in time, so I'd become a bit cynical. So anyway, where it becomes a little bit funny, if you have a bizarre sense of humour as I do. But anyway, moving on. One day I was sending out healing to people, and because I think I'd just learned about the life review and thought that I would include it in the healing when I was doing the invocations and that kind of stuff, and I'd done the, if appropriate, with the consent of the eternal higher self kind of thing. And I sent this life review and I finished it up, and I'd actually walked away from doing the send. I'd been sending the energy, which is a process and a bit of a ritual associated with it. And as I walked away, I thought, oh, whatever. And if there's any point, if you see, throw him into the healing if you think it's worth it, whatever, completely detached from the outcome, because anyway, moving on. So I threw him in as an afterthought into the healing bucket, okay? So now I've got to point out, at this point in time of my life, there had been no genuine conversations within any of our calls or contacts. They used to end up very aggressive with him screaming at me for whatever reasons he felt like, and usually he was under the influence of alcohol. So you can imagine my surprise when a couple of days later, when I'd forgotten that I'd actually sent this healing off with the life review, then I got a phone call from him and he was sobbing. He was sobbing down the telephone to me, and he was saying he needed to talk to me because I actually at that point in time had decided I wasn't going to be having any communication with him whatsoever. And he was saying to me that he needed to talk to me because he thought he was dying. And I was like, good grief. And I tried to say, why do you think that? because there's a certain amount of compassion within. And then he started to tell me about the dreams that he had. And every time I tried to interrupt and go, "Oh, I don't think you're dying," I thought, this sounds like a life review. He's got it, right? But he wouldn't let me speak, power and control. And he explained to me the dreams where he saw his life pass before his eyes, and he now understood everything that he had done. He recognized the pain that he had inflicted upon myself and my children, and he felt really, really bad about it. He wanted to make it up to us. He hadn't realized how his actions were translating to the rest of the family on an emotional level, and he was aware. He knew what was going on with the course of his actions. He was actually trying to break me financially and emotionally, because he was a very vindictive person. But anyway, through the life review, he became aware that the emotional toll it was taking on me and the children, and he offered me to be able to rent a house from him at cheap rates for as long as I wanted. Now, look, long story short, I did actually, at some point in time, he let me speak, and I explained to him that I had sent him a life review, and what he had described was what I understood to be the process, which is you feel the pain. If you've hurt other people, you are going to feel it at the life review. If you are the one that has been the victim of another person, you get understanding, and that helps to lead to forgiveness. So, if it was your mum or your dad inflicted pain on you, you start to see it not in a way where that person's behaviour is excused or justified, but you're able to see and understand at a core level that whatever they did to you was never about you, that you didn't deserve it, so that becomes affirmed, but you're able to see what shaped them and why they became the people that they did. And it's usually because of something that happened to them that shaped and corrupted their personality, shall we say, their purity, because we're all born pure, So anyway, where do I need to go from here? Basically, that the life review is about developing understanding, developing this heightened awareness, and being able to make restitution where there is a potential or a need to. And it could be, as in the instance of my ex phoning up me, because who do I need to forgive? Who do I need to ask for forgiveness from? Do I need to make a remedy to a wrongdoing that I have done to another person? And how am I going to do that? Now, the idea, of course, is about having a clean slate when it comes to our own final day of transition, because quite often people become locked into it. They become distressed during this passing stage because they are locked into the pain and suffering of what has happened throughout the course of their life. So basically, it's advisable to have a life review on a regular basis as we walk our journey of life. This is what I was taught and what I believe, so that we can actually make restitution where possible. A lot of the time, even if we mean well, even if we think that we're good people, we can and still do hurt people, even when we mean well. It's not intentional. And sometimes, when we're maintaining our personal integrity, it means saying no to people, and they may not understand, and they may actually hold harsh feelings toward you or me. And anyway, so getting down to the nuts and bolts of it, the life review is about kind of like opening up Pandora's box and doing a karmic rebalance well in advance before the final transition. I would recommend probably doing a life review every 3 or 6 months, but of course do it as you feel drawn. It will, if you're older, let's say you're in your 60s or whatever, and you're hearing about this and you think, because it can be alarming. Just be aware that you've probably got more to unpack, but that's okay. You just stick with it and you unpack it all, and then you reach that place of peace, with the acceptance and forgiveness and understanding, the heightened awareness. Now, it would be very remiss of you if I was to lead you up the garden path and say that once a person such as my ex has received a life review, that they're going to change their life completely and turn themselves around and become a whole new person, because that actually would be an untruth, and it would be very misleading of me. We all have free will. So the point being, and of course I'll draw on my experience here again because I've referred to the ex in this, is it was very interesting because He received the life review, and to all intents and purposes, directly after the life review, certainly he became a changed man, but he wasn't able to sustain it, is where I'm going. We've got free will, and of course, there's other things that need to be done. When you've got these in depth behaviours and personality traits, such as he has, and obviously plenty of people like them, they actually probably need to be working on doing healing themselves to heal a lot of these behaviours. And so with the life review, he received it, he understood it, he had free will though, and he could choose the course of or the trajectory, if I can say the word, trajectory of his life path going forward. Now, obviously, he chose not to. It wasn't an awakening for him because within 2 weeks, he had fallen back to his previous patterns of behaviour, and he would justify this because I said no to him, is where we're going. Look, I may as well give you the scenario. Okay, what happened was atypical of him. He phoned up 2 weeks later. We'd organised that, because we could talk. Yeah, it was so exciting. We had organised that he would phone the children for an access. He didn't live in the same town. And I would put the children on the phone so that they could talk to him. Now, the bottom line was, what was typical of his patterns, and this is about power and control, is that he would make the arrangements with me. I would tell the children their dad was going to call, and then he would fail to call at the scheduled time. And then he would call back at a time that he obviously decided he wanted to have access, and he would expect the children to drop everything and come to the telephone. And I thought, well, it was actually very poor timing this particular day, 2 weeks after the life review. And he called up at a time when the children were on the basketball courts. They were doing training. And I said, look, I can't get them for you. They are doing training. And he was like, well, go and get them off the court. I'm here. They need to speak to me. And I stood my ground and I said, look, because they're at the age where they actually would have been embarrassed to be called off the courts by this time, to speak with their dad, especially letting down their teammates, because you've got that whole teamwork thing. So bottom line is he became very aggressive. He retracted and reverted to type. So the point I'm making here is we can do life reviews. We can do all of this stuff, but there has to be a personal commitment, and we've all got free will. And I would actually apply this saying here that you can take a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. He knew categorically, without a doubt, because of his life review, that there was a phenomena beyond himself. And I just, I'm not even going to speculate on his motives there, or what might this mean for people in general, but this is based on my experience. Now, I imagine this is a title that, with the screen title here of multiculturalism, that this is one that makes you go, what? What does that mean? This is about belief and perception, okay? Once I was developing my gifts, probably would have been about 5 years after the life review thing, a friend of mine was experiencing what we like to call an uninvited guest that didn't have a body, that was making things go bump in the night. And to simplify it, they were really not happy campers about it. So I had, because of course I can do distance healing and this kind of thing, I tried to shift it a number of times, but it kept coming back, okay? And every time it came back, I've got to say, it became a lot more active. Now, what I do understand, and I knew at the time, and I was saying to them, this is a problem because it is coming back because you are doubting the process. And I know exactly where it's coming from. It's your partner, okay? It was her husband. And he was extremely frightened by all of this phenomena. And every time we would say, look, just relax now, it's moved, he would do that question like, has it really gone, right? The moment you ask that, you've created the opening for it to come back in. So anyway, it was becoming a little bit dire, and I thought, look, there's nothing for it. I've got to go over and try and have a chat with it. And I didn't feel that I actually had my clairs developed enough to be effective as a communicator in this instance. So what happened was we approached it from a group situation, because we had shared gifts. We had people with different stages of clairaudience and clairvoyance and that kind of thing. But either way, we opened up a conversation with this spirit. And what we learned through this process, it did actually become quite friendly, by the way. And in fact, from an empathetic perspective, I felt very sorry for it. It turned out that it was very confused about where it needed to go now that it didn't have a body. And what we were able to get out of this is basically through the conversation that because it was multicultural, it had been okay, let's just call it the spirit. The spirit, when it was alive, was of mixed ethnicity. It was had an Aboriginal background, Australian Aboriginal. It had Christianity as part of its background, and it also had Muslim. Okay, so it was concerned when we were trying to say you need to go through to the light for whatever you need for your highest good, this kind of thing. It was like, well, what light? And then it was showing us three. Now, I'm saying this because we actually did have humour within this situation, because I guess we are, whoever I tend to associate with, we do apply light and humour to situations. It's not all fear-based stuff. So it was like, well, what are you talking about? 3 lights? We'd never known of this. And in fact, I'll go a bit further and say that I don't believe there are 3 lights. This is about perception. What I think, the way I interpreted this experience was human limitation and restriction, and a belief in separation and division. And of course, this is translated into the physical existence, where some people believe that there is no similarity across cultures. But the bottom line is we have one creator and we just have different ways of approaching it. So this is how I approach it, okay? Bottom line is, we had this kind of conversation as best we could with the spirit to say, look, I thought there was only one light, but, who am I? I've just got a body. I don't know everything. And it was like, well, clearly we were building a rapport with this spirit where it actually trusted us. And so we were able to say, well, look, you trust us. Clearly you can feel what our thoughts are. So it knew that we were not threatening or hateful towards it or sending anything less than love and care to it. It was like, so our intention is not to hurt you or harm you. So can you trust us to trust our guides and angels to take you to where it needs to, where the spirit needed to go for whatever it needed for its highest good? And of course, the communication that we got back was, yes, that's fine. Thank you very much. So I think, to be honest, if I recall correctly, what I had said to the spirit was, look, as far as I know, if you're not ready to go through to the light, there's a place that you can go to where you get a bit of healing, energetic healing, to help remove the emotional pain, to help you make an informed decision and choice. It's kind of the equivalent of a hospital for those people in body. Anyway, suffice to say, the spirit moved on and there was no grief or anything after that. So I just want to say, look, sometimes the way we live our lives, excuse my little doggy that's just pulled something off the shelf, sometimes the way we live our lives and the challenges and the teachings that we get can actually inhibit the soul growth, I guess, and the ease of transition. So other barriers that can occur are actually ones involved with love and attachment. They're not deliberate, they're not misguided, or well, maybe they are misguided, but certainly there's nothing malicious about it. So I can give you a couple of examples of when love and attachment has created some real discomfort within the transition from the body to the spirit. And part of it was, the first one I think of, I'm going to try and keep it short, was I was working in a hospital situation. I used to do the meals, and there was a gentleman who was absolutely ravaged by cancer. And when he came into the hospital, I was told he's not going to live very long, probably a couple of days. He's end of life. And the bottom line is he actually lived on for another 6 or 7 weeks after coming into the hospital. Now, I put that down to, I also had to go through some healing through this process, because I became very angry and frustrated at his wife and his only son, because I felt that they were forcing him to stay alive at a time when he should have shifted on. Now, of course, that's because, obviously I could feel the man's pain, or, I had empathy towards his situation, and I knew that he was resisting death because they were not ready to let him go. They were just grieving, absolutely grieving. So where I'm going with this is that I realised that, hey, we're all human. I'm judging this family. And at the end of the day, they love him, so that's my healing to work on for me, is to release judgment of them within their grief. But I also decided that I would send healing to the family unit to help them come to terms and accept his passing, because it was inevitable. They were still hoping and praying for a miracle, but the man was actually not even able to eat or speak by this stage. He had the capacity to, you could see that he could understand and interpret information. He could communicate with his eyes, but that was all he had left. And what ended up happening is, actually, after I started sending the healing energy, and I also was questioning the process, because we've got to detach. When we send healing, we've got to be detached from the outcome. And I wasn't noticing any diminishing of his experiences or the families. But what happened was, I started forming a closer relationship with the wife, and I could see that it gave pleasure to her each day when I went into the hospital. And she actually told me that she could tell by his eyes that her husband liked me. Now, there's a reason for this that she actually wasn't present for. I knew it, he knew it. I'd actually had a fight with a matron outside of his door at the hospital, because although he couldn't eat, I was aware that macaroni cheese was his favourite meal. God, I'm giving you too much information here. But anyway, I'd put some food on a plate, and the matron went by and she said, "Why have you put all that food on there? He can't eat, you know that." And I turned around and stood up to her, which people don't do, of course. And I said, "Well, he might not be able to eat, but if he feels hungry, it's his favourite meal apparently, and I've put some on there." Anyway, long story short, I went in there and I thought, if that man could laugh verbally, I would have been hearing him laugh. But from there on, we had a connection. The story is a little bit more detailed there, but I actually happened to be present when I saw a light go off in his eyes, where he decided that he needed to go. It's an experience that occurred that is embedded on my brain as well, because I thought about him continually all night long. I mean, I didn't want to see him suffer either, but I know that something that I said actually triggered this light bulb moment. I saw it happen in his eyes. His wife saw it, and I went home from work and I knew that he wouldn't be there the next day, and of course he wasn't. He'd passed over. So anyway, that's just an example. He needed to be released by the family, find that peace that he needed to be able to transition to the next side. Now, I'll try and speed this up when it comes to the other scenario of needing to be released by the family for the ease of transition. Is within my own family unit, my children had a paternal great uncle who was quite simple, and by that I mean he had the maturity and intelligence of perhaps a 9-year-old child, an absolute innocent. He was an absolute sweetheart. He was about 75 and he'd been starved of oxygen when he was about 2 years old. Anyway, he was diagnosed with cancer, and he passed really quite quickly from the time that he was diagnosed. Now, they lived in a different town, to try and put some context on this. And I arrived into town because I knew that he wasn't far away, and I knew that the children wanted to see him before he passed over. So it was about 2 months before he actually did transition that I went and visited him. And he told me in his beautiful childish way that he was no longer frightened of dying, because one of the people in the aged care facility that he was living was also a Reiki practitioner, had done healing on him. And he, this beautiful, sweet uncle, said in his childish way to me what his description was. He had seen a light being with lots and lots of gold that he described and called Jesus. And he said, "I'm not frightened anymore," he said, "because I know everything's going to be okay when I pass over." And I said to him, "Were you frightened?" Because I didn't know that. I asked the questions, "Were you frightened?" He goes, "Oh, yes, I was, but not anymore." And then I said, "Oh, okay, I didn't know that, but I'm glad you're happy about it," that kind of thing. And then he said, "No, the only thing that bothers me is who's going to look after Mum when I go." He said, "That's the bit that bothers me. I worry about Mum." So for the purposes of time, I was up there the day that he passed over. Nana and I were sitting there, and he was fighting and resisting passing. And Nana got upset, and she turned around and she said, "I don't know why he's fighting and resisting. He's in so much pain, he should just go." And I said, "Nana, as you do. I thought I've got to be brutally honest here, with as much sensitivity as I can. I said, Nana, he's holding on for you. He's concerned about who's going to look after you when you pass. So, suffice to say, we addressed that. We knew that he could hear. I knew that he could consciously hear the conversation that was going on, even if he couldn't respond because he was at end of life, and he went into the death rattle. Now, while that might sound like a sad story for people, I don't want you to cry about this or feel too sad, because the reality is, each one of us that he was close to, he actually visited in spirit. So he passed away in the middle of the night, but he visited me. He did a miracle at my place. He went over to another cousin, actually pulled a doily off a buffet, broke some ornaments apparently, and stopped a clock somewhere else. And this was through the transition process. Now, the other thing is too, I can feel the energy as I talk about it. He comes to visit fairly regularly to myself and my children, and it is an absolute blessing. So although he is no longer in body, he's still with us, and we know that. So yeah, I've got to let that go. The video will get too long. So one of the biggest barriers for ease of transition includes belief. Okay, belief in limitation. This belief that when they leave their body, that they are forever distanced. If they go through to the light, then they will never ever be able to come back. Now, this is a myth, and I can tell you from my perspective, absolutely, it is untrue. Once the spirit has been liberated from the body, it is multiple layered. Our spirit, as you will know, has got multiple layers to it, and without trying to be too complex about it, spirit can be anywhere and everywhere at the one time. It can leave aspects of itself. So basically, I can feel the presence of my children's uncle with me today because I'm talking about him, okay? But that doesn't mean to say that if my children in another state aren't thinking of him, that he's not going to be able to attend to them as well. So spirit can be in more than one place at one time. But it is also a matter of learning how to use this newfound energy that they have once the body is gone. So a spirit doesn't automatically know how to do all of this stuff. That's part of the ongoing soul growth or memory recollection. Now, unfortunately, some religions will treat or teach people that the spirit is limited as well. Now, limitation is a human construct. I cannot reiterate this enough to you. Limitation is a product of human mind, and when we're talking about spirit and spiritual energy and all the rest of it, it is unlimited. Divine energy is the essence of everything. Now, we can become fanciful. I think there's a problem with that. I might have to discuss that in a future video. This is where people can become ungrounded, but there is still a very practical, logical, rational component to the idea of unlimited and unrestricted. Now, before I get into the next slides, I want to probably offer this. When people do spirit communication, even the way mediums and spirit communicators live their lives, we've all got differences and variations on how we interpret and understand this capacity of spirit to shift and to communicate, okay? And I think some people will call it Summerland. However, I don't. I envisage Summerland to be somewhere kind of a precursor, shall we say, maybe the first pit stop on the way if you were catching a bus. But when we go through to the light, there's this very high level energy up there. But either way, whatever I think or feel or believe is actually irrelevant, because when we are talking about spiritual, raising our awareness, increasing our vibration and all the rest of it, we're talking about our personal journey, our personal interpretation. And just because I feel, believe, or think something to be true, you might have a different truth. And this is why we say, go within, find your own truth. Okay, that becomes part of the journey. Now, I'm going to go on to the next slide, and just to let you know in advance, you may notice changes in the audio because I've been chopping and changing videos today, or recording, obviously working around this little doggy woggy that I've got, who is not being too bad right now, but there may be some inconsistency come through with the audio, but I don't want to have to re-record it. But anyway, look, please do feel free. If you've got questions, I'm happy to open a discussion about this. And you know what? If people are interested enough, maybe I would open up a Patreon account, I don't know, to try and have two-sided conversations, because this kind of content, when we start talking about this and everybody's different experiences, it really expands the pool of knowledge and understanding that we all have, which is so vital to here and now. I want to share with you a little story, basically that I learned through my experience of delivering services such as spirit communication, messages, affirmations, that kind of thing. Now, if people are aware and they've visited my page on Facebook, I actually haven't delivered this service for a while now. I put it on hold, but back in the day I used to put a notice up on my page saying, if you would like a message, a free single card message, then write your name below and I will send a message direct, obviously, to you. I'll pull a card for you and I'll give you the message. Now, this particular day, I pulled a message for a lady. A lot of the time I didn't know the people. In fact, actually, most of the time I didn't know hardly any of them at all. But one particular day I sent through a message to a lady, and I'll never forget this. I'm going to be discreet with this because it was a real journey of awareness for me, and it involved the bucket list that, most of us, well, my awareness from this was actually around the bucket list. So I'll explain to you the story. I sent this lady a single card message. It was about the butterfly, and the message was that your loved ones in heaven are around you and still present. Now, what I didn't know, of course, is that this woman, she came back to me and she confirmed that this message had meaning to her. I thought it was a very simple one. I actually felt when I was sending it that it seemed a bit shallow. I wasn't sure that I was actually tapping into my own guidance properly when I sent this message through to her. But either way, I also felt this is where we allow our mind to interfere with the actual message. I also felt that I was fantasizing a little bit because I was seeing a person in my mind, and I'll go right into it. The person or the spirit that I was seeing was a Native American, and I thought, here we go, my mind's running away with itself. Everybody wants to see a Native American because I'm still a bit of a cynical at core, even though I can do spirit communication, all the rest of it. I'm still a bit of a doubting Nelly at times with my own abilities to bring forth a message. And I thought, I'm obviously off with the fairies if I'm seeing Native Americans because they seem to be very popular. Anyway, the lady comes back to me with a thank you, which was actually heartwarming, and where she turned around, she said, "Oh my God, thank you so very much. My grandmother, before she passed, said to me that she would confirm that she was around us with a butterfly." She said, so whenever, I think, digging in my memory bank, I think she was actually waiting for confirmation of a butterfly that her grandmother was with her. And of course, I was pretty blown away with the accuracy of this message myself. I continue to be amazed on a regular basis at how accurate the guides can be. But anyway, in the course of this, I said, your grandmother, I said, I've got to be honest. I have a question. I said, because I feel like I'm seeing the presence of an old woman. And I said, but I'm seeing a Native American. And I said, and what bothers me is that her style of dress is, because let's be real, I'm Australian, I live in Australia. We don't see a lot of Native Americans except for what we see on the TV. And as far as being exposed to the history goes, there's not a lot out there that an Australian would be aware of unless we actively do research into it. So I said to her, look, my issues are that I'm actually not seeing this woman present as a Native American in what I would expect to see, which is actually all the colourful dresses that, we see on social media when they're attending their dance festivals. And the lady came back to me and she said, my grandmother would not be seen dead in those kind of colours. She said she was very traditional and she always did wear the clothes that I described to this lady. And I said, that's really interesting for me, right? And thank you for validation, as you do. And then I said, I feel like she's very present still with me, that she's got more information that she wants to convey to you. But I was questioning my own capacity as being a clear medium, if you like, a clear vessel for delivering a spirit message. Now, where I'm going with this, I'm not going to do too much. I'm going to try and keep it a little ambiguous for the sake to protect the identity of the person, because I understand that our interaction ended up causing conflict for her and her extended family, because, there becomes this idea of if people aren't part of your group or mob. We call it mob in Australia. I guess in the US they must call it tribe. Then they have no right to actually know the personal stories or the stories of what has transpired for people. But what ended up happening was this grandmother would come to me in dreams, and she would show me a lot of things, including walking and validation type things for this person. I would go back to the person, send them an email, because we ended up becoming close for a while. And I would send her emails saying, she's showing me people walking along this path and it's very sad. I feel this pain and sadness with her walking. I actually see her laying down a baby. A baby must have died on this journey, and she has put the baby behind a bush or something like that. And then I was saying, but I could see the faces being painted a certain way, and without going into detail, the types of feathers and headdress that they were wearing. And this lady came back to me and she said, look, I can't talk to you about this stuff, obviously respect for her culture and values. But she said, I do recommend that you research the Trail of Tears because my grandmother walked it. All right. Well, of course, I'd never heard of the Trail of Tears. So I did go and Google it. I did, if you like, find the supporting evidence after speaking to this person that this story, I guess the dreams that this older lady was showing me was so that I could validate to this woman and her extended family that she was still there. Anyway, long story short, where we go from this, what this experience taught me, because there was a message actually for the entire family, which was they needed to record the wisdom of the grandmother for future generations. That's where we were going with this message for the family, just in case people are interested. But either way, the growth for me that came from that was that I became very aware of the presence of the grandmother. So there was I living in a farm in Western Australia, in a remote area, and feeling this grandmother around me quite a lot. She stayed for a little while, and it was a lot of fun, actually. What I learned, because I will never ever forget this, is at one stage I was driving up this road and I was about to go onto a T-junction, and it was a very dangerous intersection where trucks would come around a blind bend and quite often cars would be wiped out. Now, on this particular day, I was in a bit of a rush, and as I'm driving down the 15k dirt road to the sealed road to take off into town, I felt the presence of the grandmother with me. And I thought, oh my goodness me, Spirit continues to amaze me. I thought, she's coming along for the drive. I can feel it. And when I got to the intersection, I was actually about to plant my foot and pull out very rapidly because I thought, there was a lot of traffic coming back and forth. I thought it's one of those, do it now or you're going to be waiting for the next 5 minutes. As I have gone to plant my foot and pull out, I've got this clear, don't even think about it, don't you dare. Now, I feel that the old girl was sitting beside me in the passenger seat. Now, I followed that. And as I sat there, of course, yeah, quite right, a truck came round the bend. If I'd pulled out, I would have been wiped out. Now, the thing was, I actually felt this old girl's joy. And this is why I go into the bucket list. What I learned from her, as far as the bucket list goes, is quite often we think that after our soul has left our body, we don't have an opportunity to go and visit new places and experience new things. But clearly this lady spirit taught me, actually you can, because I recall picking up feelings from her like, I never would have thought to come here when I was in body, and her joy of the surroundings and the environment that I was living in. And it was like, wow, this is so exciting. It was so pleasurable for her. And funnily enough, I think when we connect to a spirit on a deep level, like I did with this particular old lady, I actually feel, as I'm recording this voice and remembering her, that actually she's become present around me again because I'm feeling energy. Now, this, of course, leads into the conversation of energy and thought being like a telephone line, like a communication method I'll talk about it on a different slide. I like images because they kind of portray things, okay? So, of course, these days everybody's got a mobile phone, a handheld. There's no cords involved these days. Back in the day, of course, when I was growing up, if you wanted to phone somebody, you picked up the that duva that you hold against your ear and you dial the numbers on the keypad and you connect with somebody. Well, the way it kind of works from a spiritual perspective, I call it the etheric telephone line. It's when you think of a person, it has the same kind of response or energetic thing as picking up the phone and dialing the number. We think of that person, the thought automatically goes to the spirit wherever they are, and they can be in more than one place at one time anyway, and that spirit will come to us. And we can communicate with them. Now, once we've become to that perspective where we've opened up to our clairs, if you like, we can actually feel them, feel their presence. But of course, when we don't have that capacity to feel, and this is the problem when we really love somebody and we want to feel their presence, we've got that very strong connection to them through our heart. The interesting thing is that the closer we were to them in life, the harder it is actually to feel them when they arrive and are present, And I don't know if this is because we are just blinded by emotion, that our senses are blinded and we don't see and feel them. But I know many, many very good mediums who cannot see their own loved ones, even if their loved ones are now guides for them. And if they want to get a message from their loved one specifically, they have to go and see another medium. So anyway, where I'm going with this is, yes, if you want to connect with them, pick up the etheric telephone line. Think of them. They automatically come back. And of course, if you are not receptive to them from a physical sensation perspective, this is where the symbolism like the butterfly comes in. There will be, and feathers. People like feathers too. Anyway, I shall leave that with you and get on to today's content or the channel update. So I am still moseying along with the angel content. I've almost finished it. And to bring you up to speed with what my plans are, I realised when I was recording one of the videos today that actually I probably need to put up a video in the not too distant future. It's a healing video and it helps people to face and overcome their fears. And it's a necessary part of the process of life is, this release of fear and building courage and strength to actually shift past these concepts of limitation. So anyway, on the radar, there is this idea for me to put up this video. If you want me to fast track it, let me know and I'll sort of schedule it a bit earlier. I'll work on it a bit sooner. The other thing is that when I have completed the Guardian Angel videos, it's going to have a strategy on helping you to connect with your guardian angel. And so the intention is that I'm going to load that one off schedule. That one will go up as soon as it's completed, which is not going to be in the too distant future now. It might actually happen next week. We'll see how we go. What else can I say about the angel video? Just that I intend to put up some healing guided visualization videos in the not too distant future as well. You might enjoy them. This week, of course, you will have seen the content for Stamera, the angel of forgiveness, go up. Now, forgiveness, of course, is a really necessary, vital part of the journey of awakening, if we like, and raising our vibration and living with love and light. And of course, just a reminder that when we talk about forgiveness, we're not just talking about forgiving other people for what they may have done to us. It's also about forgiving ourselves for not meeting our own expectations, I think is a good description. Next week, you will be able to see the Angel of Divine Partnership, Soqued Hozi, go up. And of course, just a reminder that when we talk about divine partnerships, they're not all necessarily intimate type partnerships. They're not necessarily romantic either. Sometimes they can be karmic, sometimes they can be business, sometimes they're friendship. But you'll be able to learn more about divine partnerships next week when this video gets loaded. So because the colour content has already been scheduled, this really is simply a case of just appraising you of what's happened with the channel over the last week and what's coming up next week. So this week, of course, you will have seen the yellow published. It's a beautiful shade of yellow. It's very empowering. It's a colour that I really love. I might actually do another video on that and how we can draw upon yellow chakra stuff. that if you want me to do stuff and to put stuff forward, as I keep saying, just ask the questions, let me know, and I will respond to them. But yeah, absolutely, there's more information I can give about stepping into the power of the yellow chakra as well. And I don't think there's anybody alive who is not going to feel the benefits of the colour pink, which of course this was published last week, because this is a colour that's associated with the heart chakra, but also the self aspects of the heart chakra, the self forgiveness, the self acceptance, and what we refer to as unconditional self love, which is not to be mistaken, of course, with superiority or egocentricity. So, where the pink is a more soft and gentle colour associated with the heart chakra, next week, what's due to be published is the colour magenta, which is a lot more stronger, a lot more vibrant. It also carries the properties too of the pink, but combined with this is the colours of red, blue, and a little bit of the purple comes into that as well as part of empowering this particular colour or shade of pink. We also have the video for black going up this week. Now, a lot of people tend to be frightened of the colour black, and I think this is because they just don't understand it. And it's a colour that probably the meaning has been misappropriated for a long time. I learned a long time ago that black is actually associated with liberty and freedom. And if you think about it, even those people that we might refer to as perhaps dark or questionable motive and intents and this kind of stuff, at core, there is a desire for liberty with them as well. They feel restricted in some way or other. But if you want to know more about the colour black, do check out the video, which is due to be published next week. So in regard to art and quotes, just the same old message really that I've been giving the last couple of weeks, which is that quotes continue to be loaded up on a regular basis. In fact, I'm trying to get ahead of myself. Really, please, if there are specific quotes that you're interested in, please do let me know. Otherwise, I just put up the ones that I'm drawn to. In regard to art reels, look, once again, I'm not doing any of the art reels, but I do have some art images that I've created this week, like the Native American one. That's because actually I'll be putting up some Native American quotes in the near future. And the other images are just ones that I think are pretty. So there you go. So, my friends, that is it for today. I thank you for your patience. I thank you for being part of my journey. I thank you for tolerating the fact that I have this little puppy that needs to go for a walk. I've realised that he is like having a toddler and he probably needs to be walked 3 times a day at the moment. He's just so energetic. But anyway, I do hope that the content is of value and interest to you. Let me know if you've got questions. By all means, I'm always open to thought suggestions. Just a reminder, you are invited to leave your own comments up. But for now, I'm going to say love you, leave you, take care. I shall catch you on the next video. Bye-bye for now. Stay blessed.